evidenced by how many people are in here. And I'm going to introduce our speaker, Craig Johnson. Our speaker today was born in 1949 and grew up in Bay St. Louis. He attended St. Stanislaus University of Southern Mississippi and Texas Women's University in Houston. Henry Jetton Tudury, Craig's grandfather, was a native Bay St. Louis and is recognized by historians as the most decorated soldier from Mississippi during World War I. The Tudury family and their offspring have shared his legacy with Dr. Charles Sullivan of the Gulf Coast Community College, who was instrumental in documenting Mr. Tudury in video and print. Later, most of the documents, medals, and other possessions were donated to the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum at Camp Shelby in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Members of the Tudury family presently living in Mississippi include grandchildren Charlene Benigno, Jenna Ryan, Lori Gamelli, Keith Johnson, and Bart Johnson. Great-grandchildren of Henry include Alex Johnson, Matt Johnson, Amy Dosher, Brian Ryan, and Stephen Ryan. We are happy to have Craig Johnson join us. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, sir. And special recognition to my niece, Annie Bear, who's over here. I just wanted to recognize her special. Thank you guys so much for inviting us. A lot of times history gets lost, and this organization has been instrumental with Jim and his monthly newsletter with the historian. Tremendous thing. I will tell you guys while I'm overcoming my fear. No. Oh, okay. Can you get me? I'll just try and stand closer to the mic. I will tell you that I went into PSD totally yesterday afternoon. This is off the record, because I got a text from Chris Roth. And Chris texted me, "Craig, let me know how the presentation went today." And I went, "Oh my God." I thought I'm not going to be able to do that. I can't show my face in Bay St. Louis. I've embarrassed the whole family by missing a presentation. I wrote him that was the most unfair thing to do and told him I would get even with him for that. But honestly, he's older than me. He just forgot what day it was. So you can tell him I said that. We've already covered my begats. The only thing I would add is I've traveled around the country extensively for the early part of my career and finally bought a company in New Orleans with my brothers. And we retired from that a while ago. Henry Jetton Tudury was my grandfather. And he was a native of Bay St. Louis, lived a very simple life, attended university in New Orleans for a brief time to be a draftsman, wound up working at the Gold Medal Bakery in Washington Street and Hancock Street as a baker. And then the war hit, and in 2017, he enlisted 1 week after the declaration of war and was sent off to Camp Shelby, which is an interesting place. There they had trenches built to simulate the trenches that they'd be facing when they got to Europe, and they actually practiced going over the top and things that soldiers do. They got a little further into their adventure by training in Britain before they were over. They had Hotchkiss guns at the time, and you'll see all this. I'll explain a little bit later. But anyway, thanks to Charles Sullivan, he documented this in film. I had spent most probably 2 weeks trying to put together a PowerPoint presentation that captured the essence of Henry Jetton. And one of my sisters said, "What about the video?" Well, the video was done in '82. It's like 40 something years ago. And I had forgotten all about it. So I played it. It's a 22-minute film that was produced by the Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College. And he did a 10 times better job than I had started to do. So I just decided to abandon Craig's speech and let Charlie Sullivan tell the story. It's very interesting. Just a little background. For Henry's grandfather and his two brothers, Antonio, Raphael, and Lorenzo, came over from Spain in the early 1850s. And Lorenzo was an engineer, and he worked from Mobile to Pensacola to Biloxi, doing ship channels. He participated, rumor has it, we'd like to document this further, that he was on a team, I think, participated in the building of Fort Massachusetts back in the day. But they landed, it's interesting, you didn't have channels back in those days. So these guys landed on Horn Island or Ship Island, where they were ferried over to the mainland because they couldn't get the size ship into the harbors on the coast. And the ship they landed on was the Teresita. But anyway, so Antonio, who was Henry Jetton Tudury's father, stayed in Bay St. Louis. The other brother was an engineer. He traveled the coast. And Raphael was the other one. Raphael, all we've got is, I don't even think, it's in my briefcase. We found an ad for a liquor store on Sheffman, I think it was Sheffman Tour, Elysian Fields, where Raphael was manager of a liquor store, but they made their own concoctions back in the day, so I think a little bit of it was medicine, a little bit of it was liquor, no telling. Henry's mother and father were Ida and Pierre Tudury. Pierre changed his name, or was known as a nickname of Peter, and they lived in Bay St. Louis all their lives. He had 3 sisters and 4 brothers in town. Some of you, I don't know, we're all sort of aging out. Lillian and Stella, his sisters, were spinsters, and they lived in the first block of Main Street, I think in the house that Flirting Girl's in, but their house may have been changed and rebuilt. But they owned the first block of Main Street during the time I was growing up. And they'd sit on their porch and they'd wave at everybody who passes by. But they were great. In 2017, Henry married my grandmother, Zelda Bermond. And they had 4 kids, 4 girls. Marie Johnson, as you may know, she was manager of the Hancock Bank for the longest time here. Elsie Tudury worked for the school board, Charlene's mother. I should actually give their married names. And then my Aunt Tootsie, and I've got Randy Sharp, one of her sons here, and his wife Kathy, and Evelyn Nash. And Evelyn kind of moved away with her husband to Cape Canaveral. He was working in the space industry, I guess. Anyway, we've already introduced the family. I wanted to introduce the family in the order of the distance they had to come from. So I was going to introduce Charlene, who came from almost the end of the world. And Randy and Kathy are from Pensacola. And then the rest of the family is scattered. Jeannie's in Hattiesburg, and everybody else is here. Anyway, a little bit about Charles Sullivan. Whoops, I lost my screen. You know, history is such an easy thing to lose if you're not diligent, and I really appreciate Charles Sullivan. A little story. He was teaching history, a renowned history teacher on the coast, and he was writing a book on the history of the Gulf Coast from Bay St. Louis to Pascagoula. And he was talking about his book in his history class, and one of his students was Debbie Johnson's brother, Mike. And the rumor has it, and Debbie can correct me, but the rumor has it he was talking about Henry Jetton Tudury and said, I'd like to know more about him, but I know he's from Bay St. Louis and I know he won a medal or 2. And Mike raised his hand and said, I think my sister is married into that family. So he said, find some information for me. And he found Charlene's mom, Elsie, and my mom, Marie. And he met with them for hours and hours and hours picking out. Elsie was kind of our family historian because she was the only one that had a great memory left. She had a photographic memory till the day she died. And she But she also, Pat Murphy can testify to that because she helped Pat develop his book as well. Anyway, Charlie graduated in 1969 from USM, which makes me closer to him because in our family we've got 5 kids, 5 bachelor's degrees, 2 MBAs, and or master's degrees. Jeannie's got one in education. Anyway, he taught at Mississippi Gulf Coast until his retirement. And he started a series as a result of, and Henry Jetton Tudury's film was the first one in a series of films. I'm not sure how many he produced. I know of 3. I suspect it was a lot more. And Henry Jetton Tudury was part of the Magnolia series. It's the first one. So this is the first film he produced, and he went on to generate more and more films.
Woodrow Wilson went to the Congress on April 2nd, 1917, and 4 days later the nation slithered over the brink into the boiling cauldron of war. Just 3 weeks after the declaration of war, 32-year-old Henry Jetton Tudury of Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, enlisted in the United States Army to fight the war to end war and to make the world safe for democracy. My name is Charles Sullivan, and I developed an interest in Tudury's military career while writing a book on Gulf Coast history. At that time, 2 of his daughters, who still reside in his hometown, made available to me his diary memoir and a number of artifacts concerning their father's service in the Great War. So we will now go over there and over the top with Mississippi's Sergeant York. With the exception of certain explanations, the words will be his. The diary begins. Enlisted in the regular Army April 24, 1917. Arrived at Gettysburg the latter part of June, and was transferred to the 59th Infantry when it was organized in July. Henry Jetton Tudury's regimental panorama is poignant indeed, for the men are posed against the rocks of the Devil's Den, where 54 years earlier their grandfathers had slaughtered one another. So Tudury and his comrades began their training for the Great War on the site of America's most titanic battle. In Tudury's words, I was transferred to the 12th Machine Gun Battalion in November 1917 as Mess Sergeant of Company C. Took a French leave at Christmas time and was home for Christmas and had a splendid time, and was married to Miss Zelma Bermond of Bay St. Louis. Was married December 27th and had a great time for 3 days. Left home at 11:30 a.m. on old number 2. Zelma, Mother, Dad, Sis, Lil, and Brother H seen me off. When I was seated in the car, tears came into my eyes and was very much downhearted to leave my loved ones, as I knew it would be a long time before I would see them again, if at all. I returned to my company and was reduced as sergeant and made acting corporal. Arrived Camp Mills, Long Island, New York, April 26, 1918. Enjoyed the sights of New York and New Jersey, and many other sights. May 6, left Camp Mills at 6:45 a.m., boarded the transport Aquitania at 11:30 a.m. May 7th, sailed from New York Harbor. We are packed and jammed. I am sleeping in the top bunk, which is 4 high. I have a hell of a time getting into my bunk, which is about a foot over my head. The space between bunks being 2 feet, we kick each other in the face. May 9th, target practice by crew on ship. May the 11th, begins zigzag going course. May 12th, all troops wearing life belts until port is reached. May 13th, escort of 5 U.S. destroyers joined us at 6 a.m. May 14th, arrived at Liverpool Harbor and docked at 4 p.m. Left on the train and passed through London. May 15th, arrived at Dover. I could hear big guns in Flanders. May 16th, left Dover at 9 a.m. Crossed the English Channel and arrived at Calais, France at 11 a.m. Quartered at Rest Camp number 6 and witnessed a big air raid that night and thought the world was coming to an end. Sergeant Benjamin Lair of Company B killed. First casualty of 4th Division. May 23rd, hostile air raid on Etaples. 3 hospitals bombed, 50 casualties. May 30th, same thing happened, 200 casualties. We witnessed several air battles here, and it looked like great sport, and we were wishing that we were aviators. May 30th, we went to rifle school, had English instructors, and they told us that we, the bloody Yanks, were all experts, and that Jerry was going to catch hell. June 1st, went to the English Channel on a 12-mile hike to take a bath. We were well heated up and the water was good and cold. It was some sight to see the whole battalion, 800 men, on the beach, naked as a newborn jaybird. June 14th, boarded the train for Paris. Tudury and the 2 million other doughboys disputed the French claim that their small boxcars could accommodate 40 men or 8 horses. But they never forgot the numbers stenciled on the sides of the boxcars, and they couldn't forget the suffocating experience. So at war's end, the veterans formed the 40 and 8 Society. Years later, the French government loaded 48 of the cars with gifts of gratitude and sent one to each American state. Mississippi's is sidetracked behind the old Capitol in Jackson. In Tudury's words, June 15th, arrived in Paris at 9 a.m. June 17th, hiked to Armentières and went into stables and barns. June 20th, started training on Hotchkiss gun with frog instructors. July 17th, hiked with full packs to the Chateau Thierry front. Encountered heavy rain that night and could not see where we were going. When we reached the battlegrounds, a heavy barrage was going on. 20 men killed in the woods by air raiders. July 18th, went over the top. I was special runner for Captain Hoops, who got mangled by a direct hit about 10 yards in front of me. Captain Hoops was a very brave man. He exposed himself too much and showed too much personal bravery. A high explosive burst 10 feet right by me. I was shell-shocked for 2 hours. July 19th and 20th, we were doing heavy fighting when I was gassed 2 or 3 times, but stuck to my post until I ran into a gas shell, and don't know how I left the battlefield. Was taken to Base Hospital 46 and was so weak I could not stand up, but regained strength, and was back with my company in 2 weeks. They were preparing for Saint-Mihiel sector, Verdun front. August 17th, witnessed a hard-fought air battle, and we had to keep well under cover as they had beaucoup enemy scouting planes. In the battle, the French and American planes brought down the Boche planes. One came down right by us, but we could not go and see it. September 5th, loaded on trucks, and rode in trucks, and rode in trucks all night, and unloaded in Saint-Mihiel sector, Verdun front. When we unloaded, a friend of mine and myself went down in a dugout. We lit a match, and the French had burrows in there, which was used for carrying large shells on top of high hills. They scared the hell out of us, so we had to lay in the mud and rain. September 7th through 12th, laid quiet for 5 days. September 12th, started the drive at 1:30 a.m. and drove the Huns and made them hit the high spots until they hit Metz. September 15th, was relieved and went back into woods in a French dugout. In this dugout, we were teaching the frogs to speak English, and they were teaching us French. I was sleeping in a high bunk when a high explosive hit by the little window of the dugout and blew me out of bed. They all thought I was killed. When I came to myself, I was laughing. The Frenchman said, "You surely have some nerve. You're a good soldier." I was carrying a message through a barrage and passed by a battery of 75s, and the frogs thought I was afraid to fire one of them. But I showed them different and fired one of them twice and asked them how many Boche did they think I killed. September 26th, over the top in support of the 58th Infantry. Thousands of prisoners taken. September 30th, took over front line in woods and met plenty resistance by machine gun nests. October 4th, over the top in the Argonne Forest. 3 of my runners got hit in the back of me when we were going over the top. The frogs said we'd never take Dead Man's Hill. It looked like the top of a pepper box full of shell holes, but we took it and advanced many more miles. October 9th, went up to front lines to put over a machine gun barrage for the 39th Infantry. I had just left that spot at 6 a.m. when Sergeant Stone and 5 men were killed. When the Germans made a stand, it was on the Meuse River, and we suffered great losses from gas and from heavy shell fire. Men were getting torn to pieces by direct fire from Austrian 88s. I was hit on the bean by the head of a 3-inch shell. I don't think it had full speed. It bent my helmet and dazed me for about 5 minutes, My head stopped the helmet from bending more. Had a hickey on my head. The Huns walked up on our machine guns. They killed Sergeant Norton and wounded Sergeant Platt. And we put a pistol barrage on them. 2 were killed and 3 taken prisoner. I had to stay there in charge of our company command post and was wishing for a shell to tear me up and put me out of my misery. We were very hungry, thirsty, and tired out. Plenty of mud, and we were wet for about 20 days. And we were just loaded with German cooties. We had to fight the cooties and the Jerrys too. The Meuse Argonne was the bloodiest battle I was in. I was signal corporal in the Meuse Argonne battle, having 19 runners in charge. 2 runners and myself were the only ones left at company headquarters when the Argonne battle was over. October 23rd, relieved from the Meuse Argonne and started on a 150-mile hike. I was granted a furlough October 26 to Aix-les-Bains, France, and stopped at a big hotel. It was the first bed I hit in 6 months. The rest did me a world of good. I never did enjoy a rest like I did that one. Being right off the lines, we were slipping all around the oil floors of the hotels and didn't know how to handle a fork and knife, and was very nervous. Being shell-shocked, I thought more than once my nerves were going to fail me. We arrived back to my company on November the 8th, and we were going to make a night attack on Metz when the armistice was signed. Corporal Walter Johnson, a Massachusetts soldier down the line from Tudury, later said of that supreme moment, "As November the 11th has followed November the 11th down through the years since 1918, one thing and one thing only comes back to me down memory lane, and that is the silence that fell upon the front at 11 a.m. November the 11th. Silence, sudden, absolute, complete. Silence almost terrifying after incessant shelling. Silence I could feel and hear. Silence that actually hurt physically." The German communique on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918, put it more simply. All quiet on the Western Front. The sound of cheering from millions on both sides broke the deafening silence, and Henry Tudury's battalion became part of the Allied Army of Liberation and Occupation. In Tudury's words, November 20th, we started our march to the Rhine. November 21st, arrived in Rumbach, Alsace-Lorraine. The thing that tickled us most was to see the homemade American flags hanging out all the windows all through Lorraine. They made us feel good. The Lorraine people were cheering us a great deal, and they were saying, "Vive l'Américain," and never seen so many children in all my life. November 22nd, my birthday, 33 years. 20 miles by Hobnail Express, cussed all day. As plenty of men were falling out, we had feet inspections. They told us to wash our feet. November 28th, Thanksgiving Day, had beans for dinner and army chicken for supper. All the boys cussing like hell, including myself. Started hiking again, hiked 6 days and hit Luxembourg. December 15th, crossed the Moselle River at Zell. It made me think of my wife, as her name is Zelma, and I call her Zell for short. The Germans treated us pretty good, as they were afraid of us at first, but they found us to be the best soldiers they had went up against. December 25th, had a bum dinner, was thinking of home like hell, and to occupy my mind, I took part in a blackface minstrel show. My name was Mr. Bowden. The show was a success. New Year's Eve, 1919, the fatal blow. I fired my .45 at midnight thinking I was home and was put in the guardhouse for 1 month and was fined $30 and reduced to private from corporal. When I was relieved from the guardhouse, found out I was recommended for the Distinguished Service Cross. March 18th, the big day, a review by General Pershing and the decoration of HJT and 21 others with the Distinguished Service Cross. The day was very cold and the snow was hitting us hard in the face. In General Pershing's speech, he praised us highly and said we were an unexcelled division. I took in the review with General Pershing and the rest of the decorated men on the review stand. I was some proud of my cross, and on our way back, I received from the YMCA a pack of cookies, being the first time I ever received anything free from them, with the exception of stationery. Received a long letter from Mother on March 29th, which cheered me up. We could not write many letters on the lines. March 31st, we have a room on top of an old German's workshop in Fade, Germany. We are scattered all around and have got to walk a mile for chow. The snow falls most of the time on this mountain, and we give the Fräuleins hell with snowballs. The whole company has snowball fights. Saddler J.H. Boyce, mechanic A.N. Nelson of Chicago, and H.J. Tudury. We have formed a jazz band among ourselves. We have a German 77 shell for a cymbal. We get the long, lonesome blues often, and we are waiting with patience for the time to go home. May 26th, we had orders to go home, but they were changed until peace is signed. Nothing much to do but hang around, and I'm getting tired of looking at this country. Oh boy, June the 28th, 1919, peace signed. Homeward journey, June 12th, in train for Brest, France. We rode the boxcars jammed together like sardines for 68 hours. On my trip, I seen several battlefields on the Flanders front, destruction that the eyes could hardly believe. July 15th, it made us feel real good to see the harbor at Brest, France. The French people greeted us with pleasant smiles, which was quite noticeable after being with the Germans for 6 months. July 18th, I was decorated by General Pétain today with the Croix de Guerre for extraordinary bravery while fighting with the French in the Second Battle of the Marne 1 year ago today. It was held in the Continental Hotel in Brest. Champagne and good wine and fine cakes were served to us while the 58th Infantry Band played. Had a good time. July 21st, left Brest at 12:30 a.m. and boarded the steamer Von Steuben. Steamed away at 7:30 a.m. Plenty seasickness. We seen a large school of whales the first day out. It took 7 days and a half to cross the ocean, 3,139 miles. July 29th, arrived okay at Hoboken, New Jersey. It made us feel real good to see the Statue of Liberty. The weather was good and hot, and we were given all kinds of good things from many societies. Entrained for Camp Merritt, New Jersey. July 30th, waiting in barracks at Camp Merritt to be shipped to home camp. August 3rd, entrained for Camp Shelby. Arrived August 6th, hot as hell. August 7th, all papers made out. 9th of August, discharged. And arrived home this night and was given a grand reception. Feeney, serial number 562712. No Mississippi soldier was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for service in World War I, but the nation did bestow upon Henry Jetton Tudury its second highest award for extraordinary heroism in combat, the Distinguished Service Cross, together with the Purple Heart and other lesser medals. In addition, the French awarded him the prestigious Croix de Guerre. Therefore, I believe him to be Mississippi's most decorated doughboy. Henry Jetton Tudury and his comrades believed that they had fought the war to end war, that they had made the world safe for democracy. They were wrong about that. They returned home to marry the girl next door and raise a new crop of 18-year-olds who went back over there when Adolf Hitler ended the generation-long armistice with round 2 of this century's 30 Years' War. At least the Tudurys, who had raised 4 daughters, avoided that sacrifice. But Henry paid for his journey over there all his life. His lungs were seared by carcinogenic gas, and he suffered from chronic nervous attacks and general ill health. He sought solace in the bottle and Prince Albert ready-rolled cigarettes, and his children were forbidden to shoot firecrackers or make any loud noise. Yet at special times, most notably New Year's Eve, he would fire his old .45 into the air. His appeals to the Veterans Administration virtually ignored. He died in penury and he died in agony from cancer in 1952, but he died bravely. He is buried in St. Mary's Cemetery in Bay St. Louis, and in large measure, his life and death reflects the epitaph for his generation, delivered in the greatest war novel of all time by a soldier he faced across no man's land. This story is to be neither an accusation nor a confession, and least of all an adventure. For death is not an adventure to those who stand face to face with it. It will try simply to tell of a generation of men who, even though they may have escaped its shells, were destroyed by the war.
Anyway, look what credit to Charles Sullivan. He died a few years ago, and he was brilliant. Credit to Henry Jetton Tudury for writing this diary the whole time he was gone. How many stories have we lost because nobody referenced him? But the bottom line is Henry Jetton Tudury was no different than anybody in this room. He was just an ordinary guy doing his job, and his job was to join the Army, and his job was to be a runner. And there were a lot of people that didn't get a medal, how many 17 people that died when he said he went over the top and left with 20 and came back with 3. What you're seeing here is what's going on in Ukraine right now, except they didn't have radios, they didn't have satellites, they didn't have tanks, they barely had airplanes. In Ukraine, they're sitting in trenches waiting for a drone to bomb them. So it's a lot less casualties, I guess. Anyway, don't get me started.
There's war.
Yeah, he changed. I mean, he just changed. He was thrown into some of the most intense fighting in the world, and it's amazing. I get emotional every time I see this film. Anyway, but he remained a great provider. And somebody said, that's what it's all about. And this perfectly describes my grandfather. His military career is on permanent display at the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum in Hattiesburg. I would encourage you guys to go there. Off the record, they're getting ready to build a new one, which is going to be much more dramatic, but it's very, very, very entertaining and special. So I just want to thank you guys for inviting us. It's been my pleasure to present this to you. Sure.
Did he talk about it to y'all?
As far as I know, and Charlene may correct me, but as far as I know, I was the only person that remembers my grandfather being alive, and I was 3 years old. And they walked me up to his bed and said, "Say goodbye to Papa," because he was dying. Were you part of that too? Yeah. And I don't know why at 3.5, I don't remember anything, but I remember that moment. Anyway, we're going to end the talk now. We're staying. For as long as you guys want to ask questions, we'll be here for you. Anyway,
Thank you.
thank you. Oh, I did want to tell you, it may have been confusing, but in the film it mentioned he took a French leave and went home and married my grandmother. French leave means he went AWOL, okay? and that's why he got demoted when he got back.
Oh, that's great.
And there was another thing, Hobnail Express refers to the boots that they wore when they marched for 6 days straight. Anyway, thank you guys again. Photos of his medals. This is General Pershing. This is my Aunt Elsie, Tootsie, and my mom, Marie. I think that may have been taken.